We're in the final minutes of Citizen Extra, and we're taking a look at civil servants and politics. The Law Society of Kenya has written to the chair of the Public Service Commission to investigate two public officers over the breach of the Leadership and Integrity Act and the Public Officer Ethics Act by allegedly attending a political party fundraising and being part of a political party's lobby group's committee. Joining me now to discuss this is Eunice Lumalas. She is a lawyer. Kavore Kariuki is an independent candidate vying for the Langata parliamentary seat, and Vincent Kimosop stays with us this hour. Let's begin with you, Eunice, because when we hear these allegations of, civil servants taking part in political campaigns, and certainly this has been largely affecting the Jubilee administration, there is the question regarding, these same civil servants advocating the policies, if you like, of the administration that they serve. They are currently in government, and you cannot stop the government from saying that it is working, it has been working, and will continue to work. Therefore, the differentiation in terms of a matter of law, the Public Officer and Ethics Act, is it very clear that a public officer cannot go out and say that in my capacity as a public officer, I have delivered this, that, and the other, and therefore the administration in which I work is working?
Thank you, Anne. The truth is, the issue of public officers being participating or being associated in any way with political campaigns, with politicians, with political parties, or being candidates is actually in black and white. So it's very clearly stated in our laws, and a procedure is actually and a mechanism in place on how to deal with such public officials. Now, the Law Society of Kenya has a mandate to ensure proper governance in Kenya, which is a huge mandate, I believe. And therefore, the letter that the Law Society has written is actually addressed to the right entity under the Public Service Commission Act, which is the Public Service Commission, complaining of specifically two public officials, senior public officials, as explained in the letter, who have, in the full glare of the public and media, been associated with campaigns or participating in campaigns for a specific political party. So this is very clearly stipulated. When you look at the Elections Act, it's very clear that a public official should not be associated in campaigns, should not use public funds to support a specific candidate, should not raise funds or support any specific political party or candidate. And therefore, if these two could actually be seen, and I think this is an issue of having been actually seen to be participating in that specific function, then the right procedure is to write the Public Service Commission, and they have options. It's outlined under the Act what the Public Service Commission will do. Yeah, Eunice, let me just sort of split that issue, because to me it appears that there are two. In as far as the letter by the Law Society is concerned, they single out the Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority, John Jiraine, and they single out the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Energy, Joseph Njoroge, whom the letter alleges were in the attendance of the recent fundraising dinner of the, you say political party, but obviously we know you're talking about the Jubilee, Friends of Jubilee Coalition party. But when you say that this was done in the full glare of the media, you do know that the media were in particular locked out of this event, and all media reports regarding this particular event are based on sources who were present at the meeting. Now, Citizen TV did not have a source who clarified this, so in as far as we're concerned, that remains allegations that these two were in fact present. Does the Law Society have concrete evidence that the two did in fact attend this dinner, and two, evidence that they are in fact members of the technical committee of the lobby group regarding the Jubilee fundraiser? I must say that the procedure provided as to whether or not they actually were there, whether or not they were actually seen, is, as I was trying to explain, under the Public Service Commission Act, the Commission has the mandate to investigate within 60 days into those allegations and to make a preliminary finding so that they would be ordinarily calling for people who are there, who have seen them. I know there were media reports that they were there and they are part of a technical committee, and we are warned not to always believe what we read, so I think you have a point there. But the issue is when they are making a preliminary inquiry, we would expect that LSK would be called to give whatever source of evidence they may have. One or two other people who may have been at the function could be called forward, and evidence related to what technical committee it is expected to be adduced at that specific inquiry.
Right, and thank you for that clarification. Having said that, though, the difference between the case of these two particular civil servants who are being accused of something, you know, very blatant and flagrant, there is the broader question of other civil servants, you know, in particular cabinet secretaries who have been seen at, you know, campaign stops, you know, receiving the president, etc. And the explanation that you get from government, Eunice, is the fact that, you know, these are government officials saying what the government has done. And that is where I'm asking about the letter of the law. Is there anything that would go to the extent of saying that a government official cannot say what they have in fact done, even under the hashtag GOK delivers, and that is equal to campaigning for a political party?
When you look at the Public Officer Ethics Act, and generally the entire architecture of law relating to public officers and their activities with political parties, you will find that it's very proper as a country that we remove ourselves from the entire picture and association with any party and look at the issue of public officers and their interest. I think the mischief here is to ensure that we, or those who are public officials, are able to distinguish their personal interest from their public office, so that anybody looking at this public officer sitting at a campaign platform and rallying support for a certain political candidate would ask themselves, is this conduct that is instilling confidence in that office? Okay, because the law goes as far as saying do not use public resources to initiate projects, you know, that can be easily associated with a certain candidate in a certain area when you go there. So yes, I think when you look at the Public Officers Ethics Act, then there are various provisions from Section 12, 16, etc., and the Leadership and Integrity Act. The important thing is for us as a citizenry to look at this public officer who has been given sovereign powers to support the government with that a bit of power in leading the nation, to be able to know that this person is someone we can trust with that office. Our funds are being used for the proper for the use in which they are designated for, and they cannot be misapplied or misused for, you know, for campaigns.
Yeah, and I hear you sort of saying it's more there's a letter of the law, but more than that, I suppose the spirit is supposed to guide, you know, how public officers act. What are your own thoughts, Kavore? You're vying in Langata, and so as a candidate in this election, do you believe that there has been, you know, flagrant disregard by public officers in taking part in this election and actually campaigning?
Well, thank you very much, Anne. And as you correctly put it, I am now a candidate for Member of Parliament in Langata, and I would like to take this early opportunity to thank the people of Langata for embracing me in the way that they have.
Answer my question, sir.
So now, with regard to your question, I think the law is very clear. In this particular regard, it's in black and white. Article 75 of our Constitution clearly says that a public officer should not engage in these kinds of activities. And it further goes to say, to prescribe a penalty for that, and actually says this public officer who is found guilty of these kinds of activities should actually be suspended or fired from duty. And furthermore, when we see this misuse of these public resources or public officers, whatever you might want to call them, there's another article in our Constitution, Article 81, and allow me to paraphrase that. It says that our elections should be conducted without, they should be free and fair and without intimidation and without corruption. Anytime you see your boss being presented as the flower girl for this particular party, or speaking turns about the goodness of this current regime, you almost feel intimidated, you feel threatened, you feel like if you express your right to vote as a citizen, that it may be used against you. So when our constitution is very clear that we should not be intimidated, we should not intimidate our citizens in voting for particular candidates, I think every good citizen would want to adhere to the law. And this time around, and I think it has been very obvious that Wanjiku is sick and tired of this party politics, and they just want to be given the opportunity come August 8 to elect the leaders of their choice, because the constitution is also very clear on the kinds of leaders that they should elect. In chapter 6, article 73 clearly says that we should elect leaders of competence, leaders of integrity, leaders who are suitable for these particular positions.
Yeah.
So Wanjiku is just waiting for that opportunity, and they don't need to be intimidated.
I'm struggling to see how they're being intimidated in the scenario that you're giving.
Let me rephrase that then. Anytime a major public officer stands on a podium with His Excellency the President, Mr. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, obviously there are those people who will feel intimidated when their boss, a cabinet secretary, is basically articulating.
You're saying it's intimidating public servants.
Exactly.
Who work under that person. Okay.
Exactly.
That could be arguable. Let me come to you. Now, who do we have here? Vincent. I beg your pardon. I've just had so many guests this morning. Can you believe I nearly forgot your name? Yeah. Shame on me, right?
A national apology.
I'm happy to nationally apologize to you, Vincent. I'm sorry that I forgot your name.
Grace.
Thank you. Look at you. If all guests were like you. Okay. So on this issue of campaign, civil servants, taking part in politics, and even the allegations going as far as to say state resources have been used in this campaign. I mean, we have seen the president, at least in the launch of his campaigns, and I believe in some stops, being seen to use private vehicles and not, the official vehicle that he actually uses, when he's on official duty. So perhaps to some extent there has been the appearance of a separation of public resources and private resources in campaigning. But in as far as campaign laws are concerned, is this demarcation clear enough? Are we able to, within the existing laws, actually trace the monies that political parties are using, where they're coming from, and to also see from political parties, tracking of their expenditure to know for sure that public resources are not being used in this campaign?
Haven't forgiven you, so let me
thank you.
I think and we are not there. It's a good area that we would want to see that kind of law, because one of our values under Article 10 is accountability and the rule of law. So campaign financing regime has not been able to take the depth that we would want and envisage as happens in other countries. And in the US, for example, when Barack Obama is campaigning, or any presidential candidate is campaigning, on issues to do that are related to the campaign, they compensate the exchequer thereafter. For example, what it took to protect, to ensure that the president was protected, they are able to give that level of accountability. Now, and if you remember, in 2013, it's estimated that approximately maybe 20 billion was spent in the presidential campaigns in 2013. Now, if you looked at the audited accounts of political parties on how much they spend, some of them, or none of them, reported more than 500,000. So you can actually see also the level of disclosure on this issue is not to the thresholds that we would want to see. Now, it is good for LSK, which has a responsibility publicly to advance and promote the rule of law, to write letters and also ask for certain investigations and clarifications. But I would advise LSK, for example, at times also the approach in a political season like this, they also need to ensure that they act but also safeguard their independence, so that they are not drawn into the campaigns and the divisions that electoral period comes in. So maybe a press conference, for example, if It's true that there were no access to the media. If this information was not available publicly, maybe a press conference would have done, still pass the message and ensure that people are held into account. I'm aware, Anne, of a governor who was not voted in by even the people he employed. So at times, it is also good to allow the element that how do we inculcate a culture and a value that also ensures that people conduct themselves in integrity and in a transparent manner, because we are on a path of growing and deepening our democracy.
And I thank you for your views. My sincere apologies to my guests in this last quadrant of the hour, because we certainly have not had enough time to speak to you, but time has gotten away from me and we must wind up there. But my thanks are nonetheless to Kavori Kariuki, who is an independent candidate vying for the Langata parliamentary seat, Eunice Lumalas, who is a city lawyer, and Vincent Kimosop, governance expert. I want to catch up with just a story that we've been following for you throughout Citizen Extra, which of course is of this significant inferno that took place in London. We have heard from the London Fire Department this morning, and a report attributed to the Guardian newspaper, that several people have been confirmed dead. We do not have specific numbers. It's a story we're going to stay on top of for you. Of course, seeing these images from London reminds us of the own disaster we've had here at home in Kware, where although it was not an inferno, it was a building collapse, but nonetheless 2 people confirmed, at least in the local deaths surrounding, buildings that have, brought trouble, if you like, upon their occupants in Kware, in Nairobi, in Pipeline Estate in particular. We're confirming 2 people dead following that Monday night 8-story building collapse. And in London, the image that you're seeing, several people have been confirmed dead. We are waiting for specific numbers on that, but I mean, seeing these 2 incidents, one in Nairobi, another in London, certainly does make you wonder about building codes and whether they're adhered to. We've seen those problems, at least with construction here at home, that has led to collapse, and we're waiting to see what the reasons surrounding this London building